This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 383 for Wednesday, November 25th, 2020. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into, and boy, do we have a geeky show for you this week. Joining me is Alastair McFly. You can find him at iMcFly on Twitter, or if you're into streaming and Minecraft, you can check him out at Alastair McFly on Twitter and Alastair McFly on Twitch. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you for having me back. This is exciting.
Yes, we have a very Star Trek focused show this week, and you are one of the top two people that I wanted to bring on to talk about this. The other person is my friend James, the civilian. Hello, James.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hey, my pleasure, man. First time on the show, first time on a podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And I think we're going to have a good time. So I guess to kind of get people familiar with you, James, because it is your first time here, a little background perhaps about your nerdy history, just to kind of bring people up to speed.
Sure. I guess we'll start with Star Trek, since that's the focus of this episode. I've basically been watching Star Trek for as long as I can remember. I watched TOS reruns when I was a small child, but I would say that TNG was, quote, my Star Trek. That was the one I really grew up on. And of course, I watched DS9 and Voyager. But I kind of watched reruns of that. I didn't really watch it sort of in sequence, as you would say. I didn't do that until I was an adult. So I guess I would start there with my geek history and some of the basic stuff as well. We play a lot of video games. I watch a lot of science fiction TV and movies if I can. But Star Trek's kind of the big one, I think.
Nice. And I know, Alastair, we've had you on the show before with regards to your Star Trek history, but what have you been doing that's been nerdy in the last, couple of months since you've been on the show?
Oh, God. Well, I've been starting a book, is one thing. And also beginning to go through a bit of a midlife crisis, I think, as well.
While writing the novel, as one does when they write a novel.
Not even just for the novel. So we'll talk about the book first. So it's not really a novel; it's a guide.
Okay.
It's a guide on Star Trek. Actually, I've had a lot of people kind of come to me, sort of saying, I want to get into Star Trek now, and watch it, but I don't know where to begin because there's just so much of it now. So it's really just an unofficial guide to navigating over 50 years of the final frontier. So it puts things into context as to when things take place and to give you a couple of different ways of watching it, either chronologically and so on, just to kind of get the most out of it, really, but also as spoiler-free as possible. That's another thing. Like, you could go on to Wikipedia stuff, and probably have quite a lot ruined. So I kind of want to keep it pretty spoiler-free for people there. But when it comes to the kind of midlife crisis thing, I've got a new addiction, a new sort of hobby that is taking a lot of my money right now, and that is home arcade machines.
Oh, right.
Oh, boy.
Yes. So to give you an idea as to how bad this addiction has gotten, so my first one just arrived today. I say first one. So I got a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cabinet that has both Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Turtles in Time. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's halfway being constructed. I've actually taken a break just to come on the show. And before it had even arrived, I've ordered two more. I've got an X-Men versus Street Fighter cabinet that has that. It's got Marvel versus Capcom. I've got a Miss Pac-Man machine coming. There's basically 10 games in all across 3 different ones. And the big problem that I've got is looking through my apartment, because I've been tidying it up, and I've suddenly realized I've got room for more. So, this is going to become a very expensive hobby, I think.
Now, are these full-size cabinets?
They're 3/4 size. So they've got what they call a riser. They're by a company called Arcade 1-Up. And they have this little riser that stands up. So you can either have it without, and it's then better for little kids, or the riser puts the control panel at the exact height that the original arcade machines would have it at. But it's a little bit smaller because they've got a flat screen display as opposed to a big CRT monitor built in there. And it's a lot better for home use to have them like that because they weigh, it's somewhere between 60 and 80 pounds versus 360 pounds for what the original cabinets would be.
Wow.
Which are just massive and heavy. So they're definitely better for home use. But I've got a feeling that I'm going to end up with quite a few more by the end of next year.
So I know that I've played both. I remember Turtles in Time quite vividly. That was at the bowling alley when I was a kid, and I was more interested in playing that than I was interested in bowling, which is funny. And I've played X-Men versus Street Fighter, although I know that there was a number of versions of that. I don't remember which one it was that I was actually playing. James, did you ever play Turtles in Time?
I didn't. That was a little maybe before my time. But I will say, Alastair, when this pandemic blows over, can we hang out? 'Cause I would really like to play X-Men versus Street Fighter.
Post-pandemic party at mine.
Post-pandemic party. That would be great.
That's actually quite good alliteration as well.
Yeah. Oh. And there will be many of those for many different reasons, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm also going to add that the Turtles cabinet is 4-player. It has 4 control sticks. Yes. Yeah. So the other one's 2-player, but this is a 4-player setup. It's great. I'm real excited to get that going. So that's going to be the rest of my evening.
Nice.
Basically.
I am 99% sure that I did eventually beat Turtles in Time. I don't remember how many quarters it took us, but we totally did it because we would have spaced it out. Like sometimes my buddy Scott and I would have been playing at the same time, and then other times, like if I didn't have any quarters, he would have to keep going while I got more, like all that kind of stuff. But I remember one of the things that struck me the most about that was them kind of like breaking the fourth wall when you would be able to grab foot soldiers and do like a special toss and they would fly up and hit the quote unquote camera and crack the screen, like not physically, but there'd be like an animation of the glass cracking when they hit the screen of the arcade cabinet. I thought that was really cool.
There's also a moment where you've got Shredder and you're kind of looking from behind Shredder, and so it's the same thing. You're just basically chucking foot soldiers at Shredder's face,
right?
And you're just kind of watching from behind him and stuff.
Yeah,
it's so good.
I'm trying to remember who I played. I'm pretty sure. I think I liked Donatello the best in the game, despite Michelangelo being my favorite turtle. So who's your go-to?
For me, it was Michelangelo anyway. I mean, when I was a kid playing it, it kind of like yourself. Like, it wasn't a bowling alley; it was at a swimming pool. So it was like my big reason to get dried and dressed as quickly as possible to have more time on it. But I did like Michelangelo and playing him. Donatello tends to be better in games because when they do make the characters slightly different, which they did in the arcades, Donatello just has more reach with his bow staff.
Yeah,
and that helps a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if it was this technical back then, but it strikes me like these days when I think about these kind of games, like Raph having his Sai, I feel like he'd be a great like kind of like stun lock, like he'd be rapid fire, kind of like hitting people a lot before they were able to actually hit him back.
That's kind of how it was. Like there was a difference in range, there was a difference in speed, there was a difference in strength. Right, on the different turtles, so it is a different experience depending on which turtle you're playing, which I thought was really cool, especially back then.
Yeah. Now with X-Men versus Street Fighter, I was a Street Fighter guy. I played Street Fighter 2 like it was going out of style on the Nintendo Super Nintendo. Yeah, Super Nintendo. Yeah. So James, you sound like you're a big Street Fighter / Street Fighter versus X-Men guy, or would this be your first experience with it?
It wouldn't be my first experience. I would definitely not say I'm good at Street Fighter. I think the thing that stands out for me for X-Men versus Street Fighter and a lot of those kind of Capcom 90s fighting games was actually the art. For me, the art as a kid growing up in the 90s with that art and stuff like the X-Men cartoon show, that was actually a really big inspiration for me to start drawing as a kid and to continue drawing as an adult. I've actually like bought art books related to Street Fighter and Marvel because of those games. So for me, it was the arc that I really remember, and I played them a little bit when I was a kid. I wouldn't say it was good, and I've continued to play Street Fighter over the years. Again, not good, but yeah, for me, it's the art that stands out.
Yeah,
They do have.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Alastair.
Well, they do have a Street Fighter cabinet as well, and that's got all the artwork on the sides and everything as well. There are rumors that they're going to be bringing out a newer version because it was one of their earlier models. But one of the things that I do love about the attention to detail is that on the original arcade cabinet, Balrog's name had a typo and it was Barlog, and they've put that exact typo on their reproduction arcade cabinet, which I thought was a nice touch.
I appreciate that kind of attention to detail.
Yeah, and that's a fun inside joke
really,
too.
really cool.
Yeah. I like the fighting games. It's been a long time since I've played one. I remember trying to find one that I liked later on, like with modern games. And the last one that I played, and it wasn't necessarily a good fighting game so much as it was just an interesting story, was the Injustice. And I think I played
That's what I wanted to bring up, actually, was Injustice.
And
because the Ninja Turtles, I think, are Injustice 2.
Oh, are they in Injustice 2? Maybe I didn't play Injustice 2.
They're DLC, I think, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I've seen videos. I've never played it, but I have seen videos online of it.
I liked it because of all the story segments. You're like, it's one of those games that you can kind of like, you can thumb your nose at whatever gameplay, good or bad, but the story was interesting in terms of like a different take on all the DC superheroes and what's going down with like a bad Superman. I mean, not my favorite story. I don't tend to like, anti-heroes or Superman as a villain, but it was an interesting, like there was correct me if I'm wrong, James, but there was like a universal, like there was a multiverse thing because at some point the Flash had to fight the Flash, or you had to fight Batman as yourself or whatever. Like you ultimately had to fight yourself at some point.
It's been a while since I played the story mode for Injustice 2. It was a couple years ago, but I do recall those fights, having to sort of fight yourself. I don't remember what the story setup was for that though.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No, I think it was across. I mean, it's DC, so there's usually a multiverse somewhere.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so because I'm not a big Mortal Kombat fan. I know that might sound, people might be poo-pooing me, but I've never really liked it. Even when it first came out, I was like, meh. I mean, it's fine, but I much prefer the Street Fighter stuff. Probably for the same reasons that you did, James. Probably because of the art and the animation and the classical stuff. I did remember liking things like Virtual Fighter for the novelty of like being able to move in 3D space. Like to go around your opponent. But I think the last time I played Street Fighter was probably like one of the turbos or something. So there's a way more characters now than I ever remember. Because I played with the original, I think there was only 8, maybe 10 to start off with.
That sounds about right. So 8 or 10.
Yeah. But
I guess I'll clarify. Once you got to Street Fighter 2 era, then it was 8 or 10 characters. Street Fighter 1, I think, was just Ryu and Ken.
Right. Yeah,
but nobody counts Street Fighter 1.
Yeah, nobody remembers. Well, that's what I remember. I remember this conversation one time. We were talking about it with some friends. It's like Street Fighter 2. Yeah, it's like, did anybody ever play Street Fighter 1? No. One of my first fighting games, which is actually similar to Turtles in Time, that I remember was Double Dragon 2 on the NES. And again, did not play Double Dragon 1, but when I bought the NES, actually I got it for my birthday, I think. Double Dragon 2 was out, and it just looked so much better than 1. I thought, well, why bother with 1? I'll just play 2. I mean, at that point on the NES back in the mid 80s, like the storyline was basically like your girlfriend got kidnapped again. So what happened in the first one? Well, she was kidnapped and we rescued her. What about this one? Well, she got kidnapped again. We have to go rescue her. Okay. I'm on board. But yeah, it's been a while since I've played anything like that. And, I'm actually looking forward to trying more of those kinds of things, because most of what I've been playing the last little while has been PC, first person, or top down. So like Minecraft Dungeons or Minecraft or Borderlands 3 and No Man's Sky. I like that kind of an experience. And so a fighting game would be a great lean back experience on an Xbox Series X if I ever get my hands on one, which does not look like it's going to happen anytime soon. However, before we move on, speaking of video games, I did want to pass on a tip from friend of the show, Ryan Murphy, who turned me onto this. Currently, right now, I think it might only be until tomorrow, the 26th of November. So don't wait. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate sale. Best Buy and Amazon, you can get 3 months for $29.99 Canadian. So rather than $16.99 a month, that's $9.99 a month. It's like 40% off. It's a great deal, and it is actually better than the Xbox All Access, which I've been talking about on the show for a few weeks. So with Xbox All Access, you have to sign up for 24 months, and you get about, I'd say $2 off a month over the course of the 2 years, which is not 40%. You're paying something like $15.99 or $14.99 instead of $17.99. And with this Best Buy and Amazon combo, Best Buy, I believe, is limiting the purchase to one per person, but Amazon is not. So depending on who's buying and what you're going to use it for, you can get a full year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which is applied to both Xbox and the PC for $10 a month, which is slick. So I'm going to go that route, I think. I've spoken with you, Alastair, about this, I think, on via text message and stuff, but I think I'm going to switch and change my tune. I'm tired of trying to figure out what the heck EB Games is doing in Canada, and I'm just going to buy the first... Well, really what I want to do is I want to get it from Best Buy, I think, because... I would get it from Amazon too if they had stock, but Best Buy strikes me as it's still something I could possibly even like purchase and either pick up or have shipped or whatever. But Best Buy has a deal where if you pick up the Xbox Series X at full price, then you can, if you decide to pick up a second controller, which has always been my plan, you get $15 off the controller. So I can save a little bit that way. And I'll be buying the Game Pass Ultimates anyway, because it's a code. It doesn't activate until you redeem the code. And what's nice about this is that I could buy 6 months worth of Game Pass Ultimate, and then maybe in June when the weather is nicer and I maybe want to do more hiking than I do want to, sit in the house and play video games, then I can just not have Game Pass active for a couple months and then like pick up another code and do it some other time. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes. The Xbox Game Pass Ultimate sale happening right now. It's part of what is, I guess, a deluge of Black Friday deals. I've seen several. I'm not seeing anything groundbreaking. I'm in the market for a lot of new things, like want to get a pair of headphones. I'm trying to pick up some new stuff. But really, most of what I'm seeing for Black Friday sales seems to be old stuff, like TVs from last year, games, older games, console games from the Xbox One are all on sale, but nothing new is on sale. Mainly nothing is new for the Xbox Series X because barely anybody has the system, so no one's buying the games or selling the games on sale. But anyway, we can get into the meat of this week's conversation, which is going to center around Star Trek Discovery, specifically season 3, but we have a unique conversation to be had here because I've been up to date on Discovery, as has Alastair, but James only just caught up to all of Discovery in the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks, James?
Yeah, about 5-6 weeks. I've watched all 35 episodes.
Wow. Okay. So right up until episode 6, which is the most recent episode of season 3, full on spoilers, folks. So if you're not caught up and you're worried about that kind of stuff, come back to us later when you've watched a few more episodes of this season. Or if you've unfortunately not watched any of Discovery, why were you here in the first place? But yes, I just want to kind of like rip that Band-Aid off now so that we can just have a free for all. But I do want to start with you, James, because Alastair and I being more familiar with the first and second season, because we've already talked about it here on the show, since you're a long time Trek watcher, Trek fan. What are your initial thoughts and feelings on Discovery so far?
Ooh.
Right?
I'm not sure where to begin.
Right. So well, let's start with like, did like, after your first, let's say like 3 or 4 or 5 episodes, like, did you like it? Or did you have to slog through, or did you enjoy the experience?
So maybe we'll start at the very beginning. That makes the most sense. I will say I did watch the first couple of episodes when they first came out in 2017, I want to say, and I did not really enjoy what I saw, and I put the show down. And then when I was asked about coming on the podcast, that's when I started my big marathon run of all these episodes in 5-6 weeks. So I did find I had to power through the first 3 or 4 episodes. I still did not like them, even upon second viewing. I did think once it got around like the middle of the season, episodes 5, 6, I actually had some fun. I think we had some really good episodes there. And it was when I think we saw Harry Mudd for the first time. That little Harry Mudd arc I actually thought was fun. And then we got to some of the Mirror Universe stuff, which I also thought was pretty fun later in season 1. And then I kind of found end of season 1 into season 2, I felt the show kind of got a bit more uneven. There would be like a good episode here or there, and then you have a few bad episodes that I really didn't enjoy as well. And then I got to season 3, the most recent season, and I actually had a friend tell me season 3 gets better. And I would say he's, on the whole, I think he's right. I think the show, the last 4 or 5 episodes actually of season 3 have been pretty good. I think the show has kind of turned around a little bit. So I'm much more interested now to see where the show goes. I do have some really fundamental problems with the first couple seasons of the show, like just starting at the basic premise of the show. And I don't know if we want to dive into those right away.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Like, so what? Like, what's the first thing that gets your Star Trek red shirt in a bunch?
So I think for me, it kind of goes back to JJ Trek a little bit. I was not the biggest fan of the JJ movies. I thought the 2009 one was okay. I really did not like Into Darkness, though, to the point where I didn't even go see Star Trek Beyond. And I think going into Discovery, it was a show that I thought wanted to look like the JJ movies to sort of pull in that audience. But it was in the main timeline, because that was one of the criticisms of the JJ movies was, well, it's this alternate universe, and it's not connected to anything else you really know. So they put Discovery in the main timeline, and then they put it in the original series era. So once again, we just had 3 movies with Spock and Kirk, and now we're going back to that era of Star Trek. And kind of going into it, I wanted something that was maybe in the future, something a little more forward-looking, rather than going back to an era of Star Trek that I feel like we've kind of just recently mined through and gotten through. So that's the whole...
And that's one of the challenging things about prequels or any kind of like insertion into timelines, is that you kind of know what happens with certain characters or certain events, especially if people are really into Trek. There's certain things that happen in certain star dates that they can kind of say, all right, well, yes, you're inserting this story into here that we've not seen, but we kind of know what events are going around it. And it takes a little bit out of the, not the mystery, but like the discovery of a series when some of the other events are, it becomes difficult to include those events and have it not be fan service, like have it be something that really means something, as opposed to just being like, oh yeah, now we're going to mention this particular battle or this particular, person, whether it's Spock or Sarek or whoever. And that's something that I found. I'm not as a big a Trekkie that kind of stuff is knowledge for me. So if it happens, it doesn't really bother me because I don't notice. But for me, I found that the first couple seasons of Discovery, the first season, I'm with you. I found I was like on the seesaw of like, am I going to like it? Am I not going to like it? It definitely took a couple episodes to get going. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think season 2 is when they did like a full season story. It wasn't so much episodic as it was like the entire season was just like one thing. I liked that a lot. I really enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed Pike in season 2. That was season 2, right?
That was season 2.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And part of it is just like the character and the charisma, and I just enjoy the actor. Anson Mount's just fantastic, and like, so stuff like that is just really, that felt more Trek to me than season 1 did.
I
kind
can
of
certainly
go ahead, Alistair.
I was just going to say I can certainly provide a bit of context around a lot of the kind of behind the scenes as to why we've ended up with Trek the way that it has been, even with the JJ series as well. Because there have been so many licensing issues when it comes to movies and TV that the reason why the JJ series had to be different and in a parallel universe was because they didn't have the rights to everything. They didn't have the rights to the exact look of the show and things like that. So that's why that kind of took on its own kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they were kind of bringing Star Trek back to television, they did want to sort of keep everything a little bit more modern because they don't want to suddenly approach the show and have it look dated pretty much as soon as it arrives. But also they wanted to do something different to be able to push it further. But one of the things that I find really interesting is I don't know if either of you have seen short treks.
No, but I do have a strong opinion on short treks.
Right. There was certainly a very experimental kind of thing for them. They were trying a lot of different styles of short form things. Not all of them are great. There were a couple that are good. But there's one interesting one called Calypso, which actually has a lot of stuff that we're seeing in season 3 appear. And that came out when they were making season 1. So there's been a lot of stuff where they've kind of gone through and they've had, as we were saying, they went into the mirror universe and then we've had Pike. They've now been pushed forward 900 years into the future. But that 900 years in the future was already teased back during season 1, during the middle of that. So they've been planning this out from the beginning. A lot of people are kind of seeing it as, they've been doing a bit of course correction. And in some cases, they absolutely have been doing so. But the overall plan was always for it to be set in the far future, not for it to be completely restricted as a prequel in the way that Enterprise was. They wanted to kind of start it off there, which I do find pretty interesting for it.
And that's one of the things. That's one of the things I really like about season 3 so far is that they did make this 900-year jump into the future, and it does sort of give you this clean slate, kind of crazy speculation because no one's done this before in Trek. So I would imagine it gives the writers a lot more wiggle room and also just like a lot more things to explore with what they've called in season 3 the burn, which as far as I can tell is basically all warp drives just kind of went boom, or any dilithium crystals just kind of went boom for an unexplained reason as of yet, which dismantled most of the Federation. There are a handful of survivors and ships and things, and it changes the dynamic, I guess, in terms of the Federation versus the rest of the known universe, and it creates an interesting, unprecedented kind of like writing opportunity for like them to explore all kinds of things. People are homesick, people are trying to establish their what's their mission, what's their objective, because the Federation is in shambles. We don't have the same stuff, the same sort of mission that we did before, and that kind of thing I find interesting. They don't always do it very well in season 3, I find, but that premise alone in the beginning of season 3 had me going, oh, okay, they really did it. Like they really did go, and we're staying here. Like it was a nice commitment for them to do it, for them to stay there and have them not retcon it and just travel back in time 2 episodes later. You know what I mean? Like it's nice that they're like, okay, we've done it. We've pulled the plug. This is our new reality. This is how we have to go from here.
And there's certainly a lot of things that they're trying to change from what we've had with Trek before. Because when Star Trek started out, the crew has kind of gotten together by the end of the pilot episode. Whether it's the original series, Next Generation, Voyager, DS9, Enterprise, like they've all kind of started to gel, and they're already a crew at the very beginning. Whereas with Discovery, they wanted to kind of start out where they're not really a crew yet, and they wanted to kind of build that together so that when they are suddenly thrown 900 years and they're dealing with all of this, they're trying to deal with it together, kind of like more as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like that Star Trek's got into this very kind of, we can just get anywhere in the galaxy now quite quickly, and the idea of going out and exploring was becoming very old hat, as the new seasons kind of came out. So having the burn kind of has them feel very restricted. Like, for us to get somewhere is going to take forever because of the whole burn thing. But Discovery in itself is in a unique position because they have the spore drive, making them the only ship that can actually get anywhere instantaneously. So it's a very different side of the coin that's playing off each other in the same kind of place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To go back to what you were saying, James, about the things that you were decidedly like either not track or things that you felt were problematic outside of those first episodes in season 1, was there other things that kind of stuck in your side with the first 2 seasons?
There were a few. Yeah, there are a few other things. I want to touch on the short tracks really quickly, just because.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because Joel, you actually talked about this on a previous episode. They made one of the short tracks a very important piece of the story in season 2. And if you didn't watch short tracks, like I did not watch those. You get to near the end of season 2, and they do that bit previously on Discovery. I was watching that, and there are all these scenes that I just do not remember. And I'm like, I just watched all of season 2 in the last 2 weeks. I would definitely remember this. And I had to break out my phone and go Google it. And it's stuff from a short track that they made a pivotal plot point. Maybe not pivotal, but they made a plot point in the main show, in the finale, that if you didn't watch that short track, you'd be very confused. And I did not appreciate that. I'm much like you had talked about in a previous episode, Joel. I kind of want to just watch Discovery, the show. I don't want to have to go chase down these short tracks or this little short form content. I just want to watch the show.
Yeah, it's the same reason why I don't want to go read Star Wars comics to know what's, to be familiar with characters that are going to show up in cartoons or movies or things like that. And to that point, there's now something happening with The Mandalorian where, and I won't get into any like specific details in case people haven't seen the most recent one, but there's a character from the cartoons that is several that are being realized in live action Star Wars, because it's all one big happy Disney family now. And that's new for Star Wars to be able to say like, hey, that character that you're familiar with from the animated series, they're going to be in The Mandalorian. And what they're doing there, what's nice about it is that so far it does not matter to you if you haven't seen the cartoon. Like it's a nice thing where the people that have seen the cartoon are excited, but the people that haven't are just like, okay, cool, new person. Like it's inconsequential. And I feel is the right way to do it. Because I remember if you're talking about it, is it the one where like someone's a princess or something?
Yeah,
it's the very first one, because they had 4 of them.
Yeah,
in season 1, and it was the first one, Runaway.
And it's Tilly's friend, right? It's Tilly's.
Yes,
yeah,
it's Tilly's friend.
That's her. Yeah, I remember that. And I mean, like, it was one of those things that my experience didn't suffer. I mean, I got the last time on Star Trek where they showed you like the bits that you needed to know. Plus, Alastair is a text message away. So I kind of said, what the heck is going on? And he went like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Oh, okay, thanks. I'm fine now. But when you say, okay, well, I want the show, like you said, James, on its own rails to give me all the information that I need. Like, it's great that if the short treks are bonus, but I don't want to go hunt down YouTube stuff. And this could be just really old fashioned of me, but I don't particularly like Star Trek in that kind of experience in short form. Like, I don't want to watch a 6 minute or 12 minutes or even half an hour. I think Star Trek does well at the 45 to 60 minute kind of like hour long drama, really. It's been like that for a very long time for, I think, a very good reason. And I find that not just with Star Trek, but with other content that's usually longer. Like, I don't want to watch a 15-minute drama. I want to watch a 15-minute like soundbite interview, maybe a comedy sketch, but like not a full drama chopped up into little bits. And I think it's got something to do with like how we as people tell stories and how long it takes for a narrative to develop most of the time I feel like an hour is too short. So when you're pulling it down to 15 minutes or however long, how long were the short treks, Alistair? Were they averaged like what, 10, 15?
Yeah, they were like 10 minutes or so in length. They weren't long at all, and they kind of came out halfway. Like you'd have the season broke up into two, so as some shows will do so, and so these were kind of like little bits in the middle just to kind of keep you going during the downtime.
Right.
And like they had like an episode with Harry Mudd. They had one that was a backstory of Saru, what it was like for him before he joined Starfleet,
right,
and why he's the only Kelpian in Starfleet. That kind of thing. And so they kind of give you these nice little extra bits whilst you're waiting for the next part to come out. And season 2, I think if I remember rightly, they they were coming out pretty much weekly, just between sort of October and January. So it really kind of kept you going over the holidays kind of thing. But I like them. They were definitely experimental. They were definitely them sort of trying out different styles. Like there's an animated one, which the animation style is good, but I didn't feel that really kind of fit in well. But it's the kind of thing that if you were a parent and Discovery is definitely not really for children this time around. That was something that you could at least show you to your kids and go, look, here's some new Star Trek that you can see. That kids would enjoy.
And I don't want to besmirch, the people doing these short treks for trying something new, because I think one of the things that I've certainly complained about on the Citadel Cafe a number of times is like the same old gets boring. You and I, Alistair, have had conversations about the CW reigns of shows that are just cookie cutter and get very old very quickly. And so, I mean, if someone's throwing the spaghetti noodle at the wall and seeing if it sticks, great. Like, at least try it. But like, I'm hoping that they don't return to that this year, because I don't feel the need. I feel that I am kind of on the fence with season 3, and we'll get there. But I don't know that my attention would really be pulled in by short treks for season 3 over the holidays. So James,
I think a lot of the pull is going to be for the new series with Captain Pike. The fact that they're moving towards that now,
right.
That's, and that's definitely a response to fans just kind of going, we want more Pike.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Yeah. And that's a stark difference I'm noticing between season 2 and season 3, is that I do miss that. They're different. I don't want to say bad or good. I think for me personally, just a matter of taste in terms of what I like about Trek and what I like about Kirk and what I like about, not necessarily Picard. Well, Picard all the time, but not Picard all the time. But there's some moments with Picard when you're just like, yeah, okay, this is what I want from Trek. And then other times it's a little bit more even. Whereas I find with something I did like about the Abrams movies, not all of them, but like what I did like about some of them was that kind of like confident swagger and banter that you get with Kirk and Scotty, and like once they kind of know each other a little bit better. And I found I got that kind of swagger from Pike, but it wasn't like dismissal. It wasn't like rude. It was more like just confident and I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for besides confident, but yeah, like I like that sort of style.
Well, you can rib a friend because you know that they can take it and that they'll take it the right way.
Yeah, that
where
kind
you've got
of
that
thing.
Familiarity with them.
Yeah, for sure. So James,
I don't want to be all negative.
No, that's what I was going to ask. So like,
I'm going to say some good stuff.
Yeah. So going back to your experience, like what are some things from Discovery season 1 and 2 that you really enjoyed?
So kind of to tie in what you just talked about with the JJ movies, one of the things I think they got right with the JJ movies was the casting. I thought the casting was great. And one of the things I really like about Discovery is the casting. I think the supporting cast especially are almost all great. I think I really like Saru. I know you're a little more uneven on Stamets, Joel. I really like Stamets. I like Tilly. I think Tilly might have been my favorite character in season 1. I really like the supporting cast in the show. And as well, while I might not necessarily appreciate the look of the JJ movies, I can't fault anyone for the work they put in. It's very clear that a lot of time and effort and money and work went into making the show look as good as it does. It's a very well made one of those, if you will. It's just not necessarily kind of my taste. I kind of liked the clean lines and clean edges that we kind of got from sort of like 90s Trek. but it is
Right.
very well made. I can't fault anybody for the work they put in. And kind of to your point earlier, Alistair, about almost like updating the sets. I do agree that, and this is kind of why I don't think a prequel really works for Star Trek anymore, is that you can't go back to TOS era and have it look like it did in the 60s. Like, the future is just not knobs and buttons anymore. That's just not what it is, right? Like, you obviously you have to update it, and I think they did a really good job on the Enterprise of finding this balance where it looks really great, it looks super slick, it looks updated, it looks like the future, but at the same time it still finds its fit in the canon, if you will, of TOS. Yes, they've got touchscreens and stuff, which Kirk never had, but it's still like they make it fit, they make it kind of work. Whereas I found, especially in season 1 with Discovery, they were just introducing all these new technologies, like just a level of technology that they just didn't have, like holograms were suddenly a thing. And they had the spore drive, which I some people think the spore drive itself sounds silly. I don't mind that, but the idea that we're going to introduce jump drive into Star Trek and then somehow rate it away, introducing that level of technology was something that I didn't necessarily like. But it all looks really well done, and I can't fault them for that. And then, like you said, the casting's great.
Yeah, I remember feeling a little bit odd about the holograms at first. But one thing that they tried to kind of make clear, certainly in some behind the scenes stuff, is that it's not the same as you would get from a holodeck. That they are kind of in between what we would have now and what a holodeck would be, where holodecks are able to produce matter that you can physically touch, whereas these are literally just holograms. So there's no real physical interaction. It would just kind of respond the way you would, in the same way that you would have a VR headset. Things could respond to you being there, but there's no actual physical, tactile sensation that you would get.
I'm gonna jump in on that. This is a nitpick. I know this is an absolute nitpick. This is me just being a jerk. I get it. I admit it. But there's a scene in one of the first couple episodes where Burnham is talking to Sarek by a hologram. So he's a hologram in her quarters, something like that. And he sits on her desk. And I just couldn't help but notice it. I don't know why. I'm like, he can't sit on her desk. He's not in the room. I know
the only thing that I could imagine is that all the rooms are laid out the same on the ship. Is the only kind of thing that I could think of with that. That's the only way that would work.
I admit it's a total nitpick, but that was.
But no,
I
hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. That's great.
It took me a minute to realize that when you guys were talking about the holograms, you're talking about the communications. Like, you're talking about when they in the next generation, they just bring people up on screen and talk that way. And in TOS, it would have just been over intercom, right? Or over comms. Like, they don't really have. Well, they would have had screens, I guess, in TOS.
Well, in TOS, it happens in both TOS and TNG that they're not flat screens, the view screens. They are a 3D projection inside, which is why, like, especially Next Generation, when the camera's at an angle, you can see Picard looking face to face at whoever's on the view screen. It's not because, the face isn't looking directly at you at the camera, because it is a 3D space within that.
Right.
And then DS9 did similar to what they're doing now, where they did actually have it where you could have somebody as a physical body kind of projected into there, but they weren't transparent at all. And all that was that the producers and directors wanted to have a little bit more visceral kind of arguments and stuff between the people rather than just being across a view screen. They wanted them to almost be there face to face. And that's how
it
they
makes
kind of
sense.
did that.
I think it's one of those things where, like, I know you're nitpick, James, but like, I can also give it like the nod of like, well, it's probably a better scene because that actor is like physically there, and then they do some cool effect on them afterwards to make them look like they're not there. Whether they, when they blip out of existence, that kind of thing. Because like I said, like or like you were saying, James, I don't for a moment think, oh wow, cool set. I am on Discovery. Like, you know, when you're in any of these scenes, and some of which, especially in season 3, are very heavily green screened because they have to be, because everything freaking moves. I'm still not like going like, oh wow, that's a really cool special effect. It's always like, wow, because a lot of times what the actors are nearby physically is a real thing. Like whether it's a ship with a bunch of plants on it, or whether it's, you know, a desert planet or whatever, like whatever they're walking across is real something, you know, whether it's soundstage or something. There's always something very physical close to the actors. And I find that only once or twice have I really felt like, oh wow, this is definitely a small set. And it was in season 3, and it wasn't like a big special effects scene. It was like one of the Western style bar fight scenes. And it's like, oh yeah, this is a 20 by 20 soundstage. That, because everything else felt so grand. It just felt so claustrophobic, and there wasn't a lot of, I'm not sure what the word is. Just the atmosphere, the depth of field, I guess, in the filming was just not there. When compared to even in the corridors on Discovery, I never think soundstage. Like it always feels so vast when they do it. And I agree with you. I think the work that they put into the show definitely shows. And before we get into, you know, breaking apart season 3 a little bit more, I'm just going to say straight up, I think the acting across the board is really good. There's not one particular person outside of maybe Giorgio that I'm not on board with, but I don't necessarily think that's the actor's fault. I think it's just the writing. But everybody is just putting in some really cool, well-rounded performances, depending on which episode it is. Sometimes actors are required to be a little bit more even throughout the whole episode, whereas I feel like there's a lot more range happening in season 3, specifically for Michael Burnham. Because I think
even. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying, because if you've got something to add, because I've got a specific example for season 3 for Burnham.
Well, I was just sort of thinking, just the supporting crew, we're starting to get so much more from them. These other people that were on the bridge that we didn't really get to know that much in season 1, we started to see a little bit more of season 2, and now season 3, I'm feeling like these characters are actually really interesting to me, and I'm wanting even more from them. Like Kayla Detmer, the navigator.
Yeah.
She is fantastic in it, and I love that she's taken on all of the stress and anxiety and pressure of the fact that she feels responsible for even getting them to the future in the first place. And she has a bit of a breakdown and kind of shows that like the amount of the toll that it's having on everybody's mental health. And they're all just kind of putting on the very friendly Starfleet kind of like, oh, everything's fine. And she just breaks down and goes, we're not fine. This is not fine.
Yeah.
And
is that
they
Nilsson?
all have to deal with it.
Is that Lieutenant Nelson? No, that's somebody else.
Detmer.
Detmer, right.
Yeah,
right.
Detmer.
Yeah. Emily Kotz. Right. Who's Owasekan? Who's that? What? No, I mean, I know who she is. What role does she have on the bridge?
Detmer?
No. Detmer's the pilot, though.
Yes.
So, Lieutenant Joanne Owasekan, who's that? Like, what's her role? She sits to the left when you're looking.
She
at
sits to the left. Yes.
Yeah. So
right.
She's kind of she's on the con station, so she'll be kind of responsible for sensors, basically the stuff that Data was doing.
Okay. All right.
So in the original series and in Discovery, navigation is on the left. And then in Next Generation, it switched over to the right, and they switched those stations over.
Okay.
So she's basically doing what Data would be doing on the Enterprise D, or what Chekhov was doing on the original series.
But Detmer is flying the ship.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Good to know.
I second Alastair's point as well. I think in the first couple of seasons, that was one of my problems, was that we didn't get to see the rest of the crew a lot. The show really wanted to be about Michael Burnham. And Joel, how you feel about Georgiou is kind of how I feel about Michael Burnham. I think she might be the least interesting character on the show in a lot of ways sometimes. And I'm really excited that in season 3, we're seeing more of the supporting cast again. Because I really felt like the show needed that.
Mm-hmm. And I want to give it I want to give it props for the long burn. Like Alistair said, like typically the crew for a Star Trek show is kind of like together by the end of the pilot, and there might be some growing pains in the first season, but really by the end of that, for the first season, you're still dealing with character development across that bridge crew usually. And in this, I think they did that, but they gave almost an entire season to Burnham. I would say season 2 was a lot of character development for Saru. And I mean, obviously Pike as well, but like I feel like Saru was like the next Saru and Tilly, I think in season 2 were like the two big, like we're really going to boost these characters up to the next level. Maybe a little bit as well on what's his name there, the Spore Drive guy, Stamets. But then now that we're into season 3, they're really hammering home like the core bridge crew and the core engineering crew. Like you're back to like the Geordi Data, Worf, like you're back to like the main kind of everybody, a doctor, like and it's not a trope. It's just like you're back to like a little bit more of the classic kind of screen time that all of these characters would get in the other series. And I quite like it. It's a little different. And so going into season 3, one of the first things that struck me to talk about Michael Burnham stretching her legs, they did this thing where Burnham was alone for a year in the future before Discovery showed up. The jump was like offset. And so she's changed and grown as a person, which is nice because then you don't have to watch that growth over the course of yet another season. Because I did find Burnham to be kind of one note, and seeing her have more emotions, even if it does involve her being high from someone shooting her with like truth serum spray or something. I really thought that the first episode did a great job of like, it feels like Trek. It has some adventure. It has some problem solving, and it has some drama, and boy, did it have some laughs. And
yeah, it's just nice to see her happy and hopeful.
Yeah. But like I was giggling to myself watching, I think it was episode 1 where she ends up at this station where they're supposed to barter for information, and they spray her with this truth stuff. And then she gets into a laser fight, like a gunfight with these new, like, things that cover your entire hand. It's almost like they're fighting with Mega Man blasters, which
I was thinking Mega Man when I saw them as well.
Which look entirely non-practical for the future. It's like, did they get bigger? Like, aren't things supposed to get smaller and more lethal in the future? But anyway, they're having this like laser blaster fight, and she is giggling to shit herself because she's high and these things are just so cool. And she does that thing where she shoots somebody with it or shoots at somebody with it, and then just like giggles to herself with glee, like, that was amazing. And it was just so honest, and it really allowed, I think, Martin Green to like stretch her acting legs as well, to not be this like, human raised by Vulcans, kind of like cold, quiet, shameful. Like, there's all this guilt that she has from the first 2 seasons, and I feel like she's finally taking a breath in season 3. And I can't really say the same about her actions in season 3 so far, but for the most part, her attitude, her dialogue, her presence, her interaction with everybody else has been a breath of fresh air. I quite enjoy that mood, because I think you're kind of like, you're along for the ride with Burnham in season 3, in terms of like, you're supposed to sort of see this crew in this season through her eyes, as you always have been. But it's a nice, like you said, Alistair, there's hope, but then there's also work. And then there's also this learning where now that they've got this, well, they're stranded. Like, they're unique in that they're 900 years into the future. They're the only crew that's experienced this, and they're all going through the same thing together. So you'll have more opportunity for different kinds of interaction, less formal interaction. Characters are having conversations. They're not just shooting Star Trek babble at one another, like all the time.
It's funny. I agree with you in the sense that I think Sneagle Martin Green has been given more space to sort of realize the character a little bit more, and I really enjoyed the same scene you noted where she was kind of hit with like the truth serum. I thought that was really funny. I really liked that scene, but I have a very different interpretation of Burnham so far in season 3. And for me, it stems from a scene in, I think it was episode 3 with Giorgio, where Giorgio basically says to her, "You can't go home again. You've been gone for a year on your own, independent, not taking orders from anyone. And now you have to reintegrate back into the ship
Right.
and back into Starfleet and back into this hierarchy. And you have to take orders again. And I can already tell you can't do it." And I know you didn't watch episode 6, but they kind of touch on that again in episode 6.
Mm.
And a lot of what I see out of Burnham's actions through season 3 so far is the fact that she really can't reintegrate back into Starfleet. Like, her actions and her words are not lining up. Like, she's initiating gunfights. She's shooting unarmed people. She's undermining authority. She's still, because she can't go home again. She can't just give up that freedom. She can't just get up and go chase book wherever across the galaxy anymore, because they're back at Starfleet now.
Yeah.
And she has to reintegrate into that. And I hope they continue with that, actually. I think that's a really interesting idea, that she's struggling to, maybe be what she thought she was or what everybody thought she could be.
And she knows it.
Yeah.
In
Yeah, she knows
way
it.
that she turned down the captain's chair completely without hesitation, just going, that's not me. I'm not going to be the right person for the captaincy. That is you, Saru.
Yeah. Are we on
Yeah, I
board
agree
with
with you,
Saru as
Alastair.
captain? Do we like Saru as captain? I'm still on the fence.
I do. I
like him.
I think
I like him.
with how much he's grown from being this very paranoid kind of character to suddenly going through an evolution, and he's suddenly got all of this confidence now. He's had to deal with his own anger issues, and now he's kind of reached that point where he is a captain, but he's now having to deal with Burnham being like a petulant child. And
Right.
he's kind of needing to do his role as captain, but he's like, I shouldn't have to parent you, but that's what I'm having to do right now, and you need to go to your room. Is effectively how he's trying to deal with things, whilst also trying not to get Discovery kicked out of Starfleet.
Yeah. I think it might be just because Saru is such a different character. And I don't mean that he's an alien. I mean that he's just so soft spoken most of the time. I feel like one of my biggest beefs with season 3 and it feels like touchy-feely whisper truck. Like, it just, there's no raised voices ever. They're always just kind of like having these soft conversations, and sometimes they're not friendly. Like, so if they're interacting with one another and they're like correcting, like you said, if he's parenting her, he's still kind of like making these suggestions of like, perhaps you should take your tone a little bit differently next time, so that we as a crew don't have to bear the brunt of your brashness, blah blah blah. And I just feel like he's always just so monotone with that kind of stuff. And I find like, it's like, I kind of want to shake him and like, Sharu, get mad. Like
It's a tough line to walk.
Yes, I agree.
Because Star Trek has always, in fact, one of Gene Roddenberry's rules was there's no arguing on the ship, which, especially for Next Generation, was a massive restriction for the writers. They're like, wait, so we can't have any internal conflict? Well, where do we get the drama from? So if you have too much of it, it takes it away from Star Trek.
Yeah.
They managed to get the balance right in DS9, but that's because a lot of that was coming between the Starfleet and non-Starfleet characters.
Right.
That's where that was coming from. So they were able to do a bit more. In Voyager, it was the fact that you had Starfleet and McKee. So I kind of understand it to a degree, just because it does make the risk of it getting away from what Star Trek is and what we're supposed to be like as a civilized culture at some point in the future.
Well, I mean,
we're not right now, but
I get that. I get that in 2020, like in terms of like when you're writing a show, like forgetting that you're immersed in Star Trek, but when you're writing a show that's being aired and consumed in 2020, I mean, maybe what the world needs right now is some love and understanding. And I'm not saying that that's not valid. I'm saying that maybe not what I want out of Star Trek. Or if it happens with that understanding, I kind of want it to be less family meeting, and more, the moral
That's
of
fair.
the story is not going to be lost on me. I don't need to have a sit down with Dad, aka Saru, and have it spelled out for me. But I on the flip side, this is to my knowledge, the first time that I've seen an alien captain as like a main lead actor in a Star Trek series. Like I'm not wrong there, right?
Yeah, no, we've certainly
think
seen
so.
the alien
Right.
captains, but not in terms of the lead.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, like I knew Worf was a captain at some point, but like just not in terms of like you are now the captain. Like as Discovery continues on down the line, provided that Saru remains the captain. I mean, like you're talking about, Jean-Luc Picard, Saru, Janeway, Kirk. Like these are the captains, like that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Pike, in the upcoming series. I mean, Doug Jones is going to be ecstatic. Like, I mean, I know, shout out to Megan, who's a regular on the show. She loves Doug Jones, and cannot say enough good things about what he does as Saru. And I agree with her. I mean, the writing for the character aside, I find him very interesting, and everything that Doug Jones is doing to encapsulate Saru and communicate that character to us it's really interesting to watch. It's weird. I only just noticed it this week, probably because the Mass Effect re-release, the remastering of Mass Effect has been announced, and the trailers are out and stuff for a 2021 revisit to Mass Effect, the series, the video game. And Saru looks an awful lot like Garrus from a certain angle. And I think it's only because in the last couple of episodes, we've seen a lot of Saru from the point of view of Burnham, who's quite short compared to him. And so you've been looking up at Saru quite a bit as captain. And I'm remembering a lot of those kind of shots from Mass Effect, because Garrus is a tall character. And so I kind of had that reflection, not in that they're alike in any way, just in terms of that they look similar in terms of their silhouette profile, that kind of thing. And I thought that was interesting. But yeah, no, I mean, I like the crew dynamic, like you said. Like I like what's going on with with Detmer, with I could take or leave Stamets. I'll fight you on this, James. He's one of those characters where, like, in a couple of episodes this season, whenever he opened his mouth, I was like, dude, I get it. You're stubborn. Like, I get it. You're stubborn and you're injured and you're going to do it anyway. Like, can you just go do it rather than telling everyone about it? Because I did find it started to get like a broken record. I feel the same way about Philippa Georgiou. Version 2 doppelganger, whatever you want to call her, she is one note. And I can't fault the actor. The writing for her this season is boring. She doesn't need to be in the scene she's in. She doesn't really. There's been a hint about it I only watched episode 5 in season 3 so far. There's a hint of it where she's been affected somehow, or her universe is being farther apart.
We see a little bit more in episode 6 as well. They still haven't kind of gotten to it yet.
Yeah.
But
something's going on to try and make her story interesting, because they got to do something, because I zero fucks given about Georgiou right now.
They've been talking about her running a Section 31 TV series spin-off. We have no idea if that's still in production, when it's going to be set, if what's going to happen in terms of her, but she may end up leaving Discovery to have that spin-off show. We don't know yet. But just going back to what you're saying about
I was just going to jump in. I do not want a Section 31 Star Trek show. That's a whole conversation for a different time. But I do not want a Star Trek Section 31 spinoff.
Section 31 is like is the spy stuff, right? That's the under the radar governmental.
I think
type.
Having a series with Pike is definitely higher up on people's priorities
right
now.
Yeah, I would agree.
Section 31.
Yeah.
I would be perfectly happy if all production resources have gone from that to the new show with Pike. But going back to what you were saying about Stamets and just his behavior and stuff, it's one of the reasons I love Jet Moreno, who just ends up just kicking his ass and putting him down every single time. And there's this whole, I hate you. I hate that you're like this. But it's always done so playfully. And I just love that banter between the two of them.
Yeah, there's a real
they're
love
doing the
there,
job.
or like they're doing their job, but there's a banter there, and I think the casting, Tig Notaro, was a perfect choice for that. And to your point, Alistair, I
Yeah.
love the rapport that all three of them have. It's not just Stamets and Reno, but Tilly as well. All three of them have this really nice dynamic, and they kind of touch on it in episode 6. I know you haven't seen it yet, Joel, but they touch on it a bit more. And I totally agree, Alistair. They're great together.
What Tig Notaro, like, what has she been in? Like, because I recognized her the moment that I saw her, but it's not
She's
like
a
I
comedian.
could place her. Oh, is that what it is? She's a stand-up. Okay.
She's stand-up comedian.
Okay.
I'm sure she's been on TV and other stuff before, but I know her primarily through stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I've probably seen her like on like a Letterman interview or Tonight Show or Instagram or something, where just things go fly by. You don't really recognize her. So, because it's one of those things where like I can appreciate the writing for her. I would say maybe she's the actor that I get the least kind of like smooth vibes off of. I kind of feel like her lines are very much lines. I don't really feel like there's a lot of conversation, but like that's also the purpose that she serves, like you guys said, is that she's kind of one-lining, insults and taking down Stamets and Notch or four as he could be taken down.
I feel like she's necessary for Stamets to grow.
Yeah.
I think that her knocking him down is going to make him realize the kind of way he behaves, and I think that he'll be better for it. I think his character will be a lot more interesting going forward because of it. Had they not brought her on the show, I think that he would just get run into the ground as a very one-note.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. There was a scene in the most recent episode that I watched, episode 5, where one of the officers from Starfleet headquarters was observing Tilly, Stamets, and what's Notaro's character's name?
Jet Reno.
All kind of like figuring out how to, do this radiation thing. They were trying to save somebody, and it was a very unprofessional exchange. Like they're all basically just like completing one another's sentences. Tilly is saying "duh," to superior officers and stuff, and the woman from the space station was just kind of like, this is incredibly unprofessional, and they acknowledge it. They say, yeah, but it's it works. And then Stamets is like, and we like it. And then Reno just does not miss a beat. She's like, no, we don't. We put up with it. We don't like it, and they don't hang on it very long. The scene cuts almost immediately thereafter. But it was just, I gotta chuckle out of it. And so stuff like that. I think the problem that I have with Stamets is like he's much better when there's 2 or 3 people. It's the monologues where he just kind of falls flat for me. And I think it's better when he's got like 2 or 3 people and you've got that kind of like quick banter, or not just banter, but like quick information going back and forth. I find that it's a much better kind of dynamic for me with that character.
It's a bit more reminiscent of McCoy and Spock.
A little bit. A little bit. You're right. Yeah. So James, I know that you mentioned before that you kind of picked up on the season-long arc with season 2. I feel that season 3 is being too episodic. Have you felt that that's been a switch and for the better?
I think it's a switch, and I do think it's a switch for the better. I do not necessarily like the sort of mystery box style of storytelling that we've kind of gotten from J.J. Abrams and sort of his crew, of which Alex Kurtzman is a part of over the years. It wasn't that it was bad, but the fact that we had this one season long arc of what is the Red Angel, this mystery box thing, it's harder to get into because you can't like pick an episode and put it on in the background. Sometimes you really do have to watch it in an order, and you have to pay attention. And if the payoff at the end doesn't really work for you, then the whole season basically doesn't work for you.
Right.
I feel like in season 3, I'm still not sure I care too much to know what the burn is. But I think they struck a better balance more along the lines of what DS9 did with the Dominion War, where we have our overarching storyline that we are advancing at times, but we also have individual episodes that are sort of more self-contained. And I think they found the balance a bit more in season 3 to my taste compared to season 2.
Yeah, I think that's kind of hitting the nail on the head. Like I've tried to kind of go back and watch, and I've really just had to kind of start from the beginning, and, or there's only like a couple of episodes you can just pick out as just like an individual thing. But when you've got episodes like Forget Me Not, which was the 4th episode,
yes,
where you basically just get so much about the Trill,
That was a great
in that.
episode. I love that
Yeah,
episode.
because the Trill we've not really known that much about realistically, because in Next Generation, it kind of showed that Starfleet knew that the Trill were a species, but it wasn't widely known about the symbiotic nature. In DS9, we only knew about it because Sisko was friends with Curzon Dax, who then became Jadzia Dax, and then Dax returned as Ezri Dax. So we've really only dealt with one Trill and just some of the relationships that she's had with other Trill around. But it's been very limited. So to see even more of Trill society and mixing it in with this is the first time that a Trill symbiote has joined with a non-Trill is really interesting as well. And I think that,
and also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but also the first time that a transgendered actor has been on Star Trek, right?
yes,
I think so.
transgender actor and non-binary as well.
Yeah. And
You know,
I'm
so
I'm scrolling through IMDb here, but the pictures are very, very small. I'm trying to find the actor's name, but I'm failing it because I quite like their performance. You know, like it's and it's a really great way to do it within Trek, because with the symbiotes, they remember all of the memories from other hosts that they've had, and it doesn't matter whether those hosts have been non-binary, whether they've been identified, you know, whether they identify as male, female, not whatever. Doesn't, you know, multiple different personalities, and it kind of creates this really unique opportunity to reflect kind of like that kind of character on screen, and have those kind of not say multiple feelings, but like that plethora of information in one being, one person is a really cool way to put forth this kind of milestone in Trek, which I think is, I mean, kudos to them. It's you and I have talked about it before with like the CW stuff being like after school special about things. And it's really, it's important, but it's also very hard to deal with. And I think they did with Forget Me Not being, I think, one of my favorite episodes this season. I think they did an excellent job with the writing. They really did. They did the character justice, and they gave the actor and the character a lot of breathing room, and it was it was just well done without kind of hammering for my thesaurus. It was just really well done.
I think you hit
I've
the
got
nail on the
names.
head, Joel. I agree.
Yeah, I've got names there as well. So Adira was played by Blue Del Barrio.
Right.
And
thank you.
And the previous host of the Tal Trill was Ian Alexander.
Right. Yeah, and I think we're going to get more of Ian Alexander in the show, because they're now kind of like, I don't want to say a voice in their head, but like they see them, right? They see them when they haven't told anybody that they've seen them. The only thing I saw with that character this particular episode was that they went on board sickbay for scans, and that was it. We never saw them again. So I'm sure we'll get more later on. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Oh yeah, there they are, Blue Del Barrio. Adira is the character's name.
Yeah, one other character that I'd be interested in your feedbacks on as well. What did you guys think of Cronenberg's appearance in the show? So he was
that was the interrogator in episode 5?
Was, interrogating Giorgio.
So
David Cronenberg.
I didn't know who it was. Like, I mean, I just kind of looked at it like, this is too much of a very specific look and attention given to this particular interrogation, because there were multiple interrogations with different characters in that episode. And I was just like, I'm going to have to look up who this old dude is later, because I don't know who it is. I'm sure it's going to be, you know, Trek related or some sort of nod, but I don't know who this is right now. No, I didn't realize it was Cronenberg. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I thought it was a great exchange. The writing was good.
I agree. I think it was a great exchange, and I think it's nice for Giorgio to finally have a foil in a way, like someone who's not in a way that like Leland in season 2 kind of wasn't. You know, Cronenberg's character wasn't intimidated by her, wasn't afraid of her in any way. He knew how to handle her. He knew how to get what he wanted out of her without overplaying his hand to a degree. It was nice for her to have that foil, because I think, Joel, I'm a lot like you, maybe even more so. I think the very presence of Mirror Universe Giorgio in this show still is just kind of ridiculous. Like that moment in season 1 where Burnham like kidnaps her basically and brings her back to the Prime universe. I'm just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What's the point of this? So I appreciated Cronenberg's appearance and being able to be that foil to her, because I think that character needed it.
I also did not realize that Cronenberg was Canadian.
I didn't know that either, actually.
Yeah. Born in Toronto.
Oh, from where you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a cool note. I enjoyed the scene. Like I just the attention to detail and that was one of those things where his lines didn't feel so much like lines as they did more, I feel like, clever manipulation to Giorgio. And there was one really good moment. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he basically called her out. He basically had figured out how she was feeling. And there was a moment where you could see the emotion kind of briefly wash over her face. And then she came back with some Giorgio, snipe, which was, typical. But there was a moment where you got to see maybe a little bit more emotion and depth to the character. I was like, oh, more of that, please.
Was it when he said to her, "There's someone you care about on the crew"?
I don't know if it was that.
Was that the moment?
It was more personal than that. It was, I think, but right before he said that, I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was something about how she was feeling.
Was it about the questions? Because I love when, when it's kind of like, who's going to ask who the question, and is like, and even if you did, you'd lie. So the only way I glean any information is via the questions you'd ask me. So please.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something a little bit more. It was something a little bit more telling about Giorgio and how she was feeling, but I don't think it was how she was feeling about Burnham, because that's not a giant secret. And I don't think she thinks that's a giant secret either. It was something about how she's feeling, about whether it was like she was being insecure or she feels very distant from her universe, or something was just not right. And he kind of like figured that out. I don't remember exactly what the phrasing was, but it was a cool scene for sure. I'm on board with some of the episodic stuff. I do find that it gets a little bit, it gets tied up with a nice, neat little bow sometimes, where I'm just kind of like, these are all human adults that are not getting along. And I don't feel like the level at which that they are not getting along can be tied up in 45 minutes. Even if it's supposed to be a day or so in, trek time, I just don't see people moving forward that fast. There was one of the ones where like, it was a family dinner that Saru tried to arrange, and basically everybody has this eruption. They fight, they snap at one another. Crew level stress levels are really high. But by the end of it, you had half of the people like saying like, "I'm sorry," and everybody making up and having a nice time. And while I appreciate that's what's going to eventually happen, it did strike me as unrealistic that it happened in such a short time period. Especially with characters like Stamets, that just, like, if he's going to apologize, the impression that I get, it's going to take him a really long time. And I'm okay with that. But it just feels like it was a little bit ham-fisted in some instances. And like you said, James, with Burnham not really fitting in, not really coming back after being a year kind of on her own and not taking orders from anybody. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I agree with you now, but coming into this podcast, I was thinking like, I am kind of tired of Burnham not learning her lesson, of not like, of being told to obey orders and then saying, yes, I will obey orders. And then the moment she has an opportunity, she doesn't obey orders. It's like, but you just said that you were going to do it, like
that was my problem with episode 1. She's like, she says that her and Giorgio agree, like, we're going to kind of talk to the Klingons. And then Burnham tries to start a mutiny.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But I think season 3, they put a nice framing on it this time.
Yeah, now that you're mentioning that, I think I might have to just be more patient with that particular storyline. I think that's probably where I am with it, but I'm on board. I'm enjoying it. I can't remember all of the moments that I found fun. I'm certainly feeling like the writing for the show has been the best so far. I'm like you. I'm not interested in any kind of like dual universe stuff. I kind of just want to stay in one place. I get enough of that from comics. I don't I don't need multiple universes in Star Trek. At least not on a regular basis.
I do like that they kind of pointed out that, because we ended up with quite a lot of crossovers, especially in DS9, to the Mirror Universe, which is supposed to be like the one closest to us in terms of the sort of the universe, multiverse kind of thing. But the fact that it's almost been kind of getting further and further away, and there hasn't been a crossing in so long.
500 years, they said, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of neat, in that it's not going to be easy for her to get back, for one, but also we're not going to see like Mirror Universe stuff popping up as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking ahead, as I often do, especially since Star Trek Picard, has become a thing, I'm noticing that Jonathan Frakes is directing not one, not two, but 3 episodes this season, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Looks like the second to last. So episode 8 and episode 12 are both Frakes, and episode 3 was as well. People of Earth, when they went back to Earth for the first time.
Which was so well done as well.
Yeah, no, I just like his directing stuff. Like, I remember going back and looking at the episode, because he directed one of the episodes of Picard, did he not? Or at least one.
I think he did 2.
Yeah. And going back and realizing that was a really good episode. And then when we talked about it in the show, I realized, oh, well, now I know why. I mean, for a number of reasons, but usually when I really am struck by something, it's like, oh, because Frakes directed it. that kind of makes a lot of sense.
It's 6 episodes of Discovery and 2 episodes of Picard.
Right. That's what it was.
I think Frakes has directed some really good episodes in Discovery. I thought episode 3 of the ones he's directed in Discovery might be the weakest. Not bad, but maybe the weakest.
I think there was parts of it where it's like, oh yeah, cool, and then other parts was like, I might not be on board. But like sometimes with directing an episode within a series, you kind of have to deal with the plate that you've been given in terms of
I think what you just said there is how I feel about his episodes of Picard, because I think Frakes is a good director, but I generally did not like Star Trek Picard. In fact, I really didn't like it, and I think Frakes was just given a bad hand in those 2 episodes. And so I know Frakes is a good director, but for me, not even he could save Picard.
Wow.
That's a whole other episode.
We'll have to have you back when Picard's back on, if you even watch it. Provide the voice of reason. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Alastair, but both you and I really enjoyed Picard, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I really did like it. I may be more forgiving with Trek, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all it is.
I have a soft spot
I do wonder, though.
Yeah.
I do wonder if they kind of looked at the scripts and went, these are the weakest ones. We need to get the best director that we can.
Right.
And as we can only afford him for a few episodes, we'll get Frakes to do those ones.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. Which is perhaps
why they're weak, but they're not terrible.
Right.
He may have actually just kind of helped save those episodes from being terrible.
Well, before we wrap things up here, any final words, James, on Discovery? Like, are you on board for season 3? Are you going to keep on going? Have you, as the Discovery hooks embedded themselves in you?
I think that's an interesting question, because I got asked that last week at my Thursday board game group. I had mentioned I was doing the podcast, and a friend of mine said that they had started Discovery and then they put it down, and then they asked me, does it get any better? And I said, not really. Like, I wouldn't advise you to pick it up. But that was before I started watching season 3. And I think season 3 has turned it around enough that the hooks are into me, and I'm going to keep going now that I'm caught up. I'm going to keep watching. So I'm enjoying it now more, and I'm going to keep going.
Do you think that having watched season 1 and 2, the character development in season 3, it's more of a payoff rather than someone just kind of jumping in to season 3?
I've thought about that question too, actually, because much like Alastair writing his book about the guide to Star Trek, I actually did that for some coworkers recently, where I helped them get into Star Trek, and I had to sort through what is important and what's not important. And I asked myself about Discovery recently, where season 3 is such a hard kind of reset of what the show is. do you need to watch seasons 1 and 2? Could you just jump in at season 3? Because if you watch the way season 3 is kind of shot and positioned, it's kind of shot that way. She lands on a planet. Where is she? She doesn't know, and you can jump in there,
Yeah,
and still have some fun. I think though that there is enough in seasons 1 and 2 that there is a bit of a payoff. For example, going back to Stamets, one of the things I loved about Stamets was they're not afraid to put his relationship with Hugh front and center, and that sort of emotional arc he had with loss and trying to cope with that loss. And then I thought that was a really great angle, and there's a great kind of payoff for that as we go.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say that seasons 1 and 2 are a bit of a slog, but I think there's enough of a payoff there in season 3 to keep going.
And Alastair, what about you in season 3? Are you like, I mean, obviously you're enjoying it, but like, is there anything you're looking forward to, or is there anything you're concerned about in season 3?
I am just kind of looking forward to kind of where things are going. We had a little bit of a teaser. They always show a teaser of the next episode, and one of the characters looked Vulcan, and when you look at his lapel, there's an icon that has the Vulcan kind of symbol for infinite diversity and infinite combinations, along with the Romulan symbol as well, which kind of shows that there has been a unification of Vulcan and Romulus.
Oh, interesting.
Which is what Spock had been trying to do throughout Next Generation, and what Picard has been trying to do in Picard, which is kind of bring peace with the Romulans and stuff. So the fact that we get this unification there's just so many little things like that that's kind of pulling me in, and I'm kind of wondering where things are going with the burn. So that I really like. But this has been kind of I don't know whether to call it a reputational curse of Star Trek, which is that, with the exception of the original series, which had a great first 2 seasons, and then the third one was considered its weakest, from Next Generation onwards, the first 2 seasons of each show have kind of been deemed the weakest for the most part. And season 3 is when those shows have really kind of found their footing and picked things up. And like you guys have been mentioning earlier, that they've kind of got on track now with stuff. James was saying it's kind of been hard rebooted for stuff, especially as they've even updated the ship now. So it's almost kind of like the issues that they had, even with just the model, they've kind of fixed up, and it looks so much nicer now. You've got that to look forward to yet, Joel. But yeah, I think season 3 is when these shows seem to kind of get their footing. And I think as a starting point for that, I think that the next few seasons, and they've planned out to, I think season 6 or 7, they've already got the path of what they've got planned that quite far out, which is very reassuring for me.
Nice. Yeah. No, I would say, japes and, nitpicks aside, I think that it's probably the strongest season so far. It certainly feels the most familiar, while also being very, very new and very interesting in terms of where the Federation is and what we're going to expect from technology and different stories and things. But I'm seeing those Star Trek canon moments of, like, commanders and captains, and captains and number ones, and the relationship that the Doctor has with everybody, and like those kind of things. The camaraderie, I think, with the crew is starting to gel, and I think that it lends itself more to more human storytelling as opposed to like the crazy sci-fi adventure that we've been on the last 2 seasons. And so I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'll keep on watching. There are episodes where I read the synopsis, on Crave, and it's like, oh God. And I obviously, Burnham defies orders and does something with Giorgio, and it's going to be a slog. But ultimately, when I watch those episodes, there is something else that happens that I find interesting or cool with other characters. To go back and back up your point, James, about like the supporting cast kind of coming back up and feeling like a lot more attention is being given to them. They'll help when the main character is doing something where you're just kind of like, oh God, eye roll. There's always someone that's not doing something that has, that doesn't make, like, there's always someone that's doing something that's not making you roll your eyes. There's always something to kind of grasp onto from all the episodes.
I do agree with you there. I do agree.
Moving on into the Internet Minute, which is brought to you by you. The Citadel Cafe is listener supported. If you are enjoying the show, please consider putting a little bit of value back into it. You can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Supporting at any level will get you an entry into our Discord-only member server, and we chat there about nerdy stuff all week long. It's a lot of fun. Patron count is currently at 22. I try to add one new patron every month, so we're currently behind on that. So if you'd like to be the next patron of the Citadel Cafe, check out patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe and join the crew now. I didn't even realize I was going to make that pun. I have a very quick pick. I did not realize that this series existed until I just kind of found it browsing around looking for some environmental related news. Solar powered trains in the UK, India, and Australia. It's on the BBC. It's a short 3-minute video. It's a film for People Fixing the World by Richard Kenny. People Fixing the World is a BBC series. It's online videos, vignettes, little news clips, and things that people are putting together from stories from people doing just really cool things to help make the planet a better place. And a lot of it, as you can imagine, focuses on the environment. And this is more of a proof of concept in the video where solar panels are being laid along the tracks in the UK to help offset greenhouse gases and provide these trains with renewable energy, because trains apparently are the number one consumer of electricity in the UK. And the panels along the side of the road or the tracks are not necessarily powering an entire train. It's more like 10%, of that particular train's route. So it's a very finite sort of situation. But as a proof of concept, it means that these two technologies can interact quite easily. So you just have to scale it up. And with solar power becoming more, affordable, and, especially from an industry standpoint, when you have to do like fields of these things, it's going to move, hopefully, things a lot farther forward as far as being a green industry. Now, one could argue that solar power in the UK might not be the best location geographically. Most of the people I talk to in the UK, it's usually foggy and rainy whenever I talk to them. So I'm not sure how much solar power they're going to get. Alastair, you can probably attest to this. However, they made a big point that in India and Australia, this is taking off like wildfire, because obviously they're much sunnier, much warmer climates, and in Australia, actually, there is an entire train line. So one particular route that is 100% solar powered. It doesn't draw power from anything else. And I don't remember the stats. You'd have to watch the 3-minute video about India, but India has a lot of solar powered trains as well. Some of which even have panels on top of the train itself, not like just on the roofs of stations or along the tracks, but on the actual train cars, there's solar panels there. So I thought it was a cool watch. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And James, you had a pick for this week as well.
Yeah, this is not me, actually. Earlier you asked about social media. I don't have any social media profiles that are public facing. I am a civilian, as we say. I don't put myself out there like you or Alastair do. So instead, I'm going to plug my friends. I have a friend, Jimmy, who has a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/protojimmy. I think there's going to be a link in the show notes, Joel.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Every Friday, he and our common friend, Zach, they hang out together, usually in real life, but these days, sometimes you have to do it from a distance. But usually they'll hang out every Friday night. They'll play some video games. And this is two lifelong friends. And I mean that in the truest sense of the word, just hanging out, playing games, and maybe not family friendly. Might be a fart joke in there or a burp joke in there every so often. But it's just two friends hanging out, playing games, really chill. Currently, they're playing Dark Souls 3. They're trying to get through that. My friend Jimmy was able to secure a PlayStation 5 from his local Shoppers Drug Mart. So he's been playing Dark Souls 3 on that the last few weeks. So yeah, just go check them out. I said I'd plug my friends, help them out with their streaming.
Nice. Very, very cool. And Alastair, do you have a pick as well?
Yes, I think just to for everybody to kind of explore my new obsession, arcade1up.com. just be able to see the kind of range that they have in terms of all these arcades that are coming out is just incredible. And I would probably say, if you want to find out a little bit more of all the YouTube channels that I've kind of scoured for all of this stuff, of which there's been a lot, Cool Toy on YouTube has done some really good reviews. He's like one of the main people they love speaking to as well. And so he's done some good interviews with the people running the company. And yeah, it's awesome. I'm going to be so poor.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can get more information about the show and links to some of the things that we talked about this week at thecitadelcafe.com. Music for the show was composed by Kevin MacLeod. You can, of course, email us at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com or find the show by name on Twitter. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. But you know what? Word of mouth is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell a friend about the Citadel Cafe and where they can go to listen to it. You'd be surprised how far that goes. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything that I'm doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio at joelduggan.com. You can check out the Spawn Chunks, my other podcast all about Minecraft, at thespawnchunks.com. Brand new snapshot for the Caves and Cliffs update came out today, so we'll be talking about that next week on the show. And of course, you can find me at Joel Duggan on social media. I'll point you towards twitch.tv/Joel Duggan, where I'm going to be playing more Minecraft and potentially even starting a single player world in the snapshots to kind of explore that new content. Alastair, where can people find you online?
They can find me on Twitter at imcfly. And for all my streaming stuff, it's Alastair McFly on both Twitter and Twitch. And I also have a website over at ohmyzod.com.
And a big shout out to James for coming out and hanging out on the show. I know you don't have anything to plug, but I wanted to thank you for taking the time because you're a busy dad, and it's been really fun to talk Trek with you, man. I hope this isn't the last time you'll be on the show.
Yeah, I've had a great time. This was my podcast debut, as you mentioned at the beginning. It's definitely been busy, as you said, and I know we talked before the show. Probably the only geeky thing I've done the last 5 weeks is watch Star Trek. So I didn't have anything else to contribute. But no, I've had fun. Thank you for having me, and I'd love to be on again.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.